ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Lagos. Good evening, and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa, Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink, and here are the top stories. Magistrates across Liberia protest against their exclusion from retroactive benefits. Reporters Without Borders react to the release of Nigerian journalist Senyi.
The major fear we had when we launched our Save Journalism in the Sahel campaign was practically to ensure that this area, at least the Central Sahel, would not be the biggest black hole for information in Africa.
Reaction trails President Mahaman's appointment of Special Envoy to the AES. And lawyers of former Guinean Prime Minister Kasori denounced procedural defects and refused to plead in court.
This is serious for the people of Guinea. No one is safe now. This is injustice. There has been preventive detention for 3 years for a founder that he did not even manage.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us, and welcome to our listeners within and beyond this sub-region. Newslink begins in Liberia, where magistrates across the country have initiated a protest against their exclusion from retroactive benefits related to the national harmonization process. They describe this decision as discriminatory and a significant misinterpretation of the Liberian Constitution. The magistrates also accused the judiciary of perpetrating systemic inequalities that undermine their essential role in the justice system. They expressed their dissatisfaction in a strongly worded letter addressed to Nancy Finasami, president of the National Association of Judges of Liberia. Echiatisu has the details.
The magistrates' disenchantment began when the Chief Justice informed the Association of Judges of Liberia that magistrates will not be included in the retroactive benefits package initiated in 2019. They argue that this decision contradicts Article 72 of the Liberian Constitution, which they assert provides equal protections and entitlements to all judicial officials, including justices, judges, and magistrates. The Liberian magistrates also pointed to Judicial Canon 5, which subjects them to the same ethical and professional restrictions as judges, including prohibitions against business and political activities. According to the magistrates, they have long struggled with poor working conditions, insufficient resources, and barriers to professional advancement. They describe the exclusion as not only a constitutional misstep, but also a blatant disregard for their contributions to upholding the rule of law. The aggrieved magistrates called on the National Association of Judges of Liberia to urgently engage the Chief Justice and other stakeholders to revisit this decision and ensure equitable treatment for all judicial officers.
Echiatisu with that report. Meanwhile, hearings into the trial of former associates of Benin's president Olivia Bokol and also Ahumeke was marred by serious tensions at the court on Tuesday. When the proceedings started, the defense lawyers raised a significant concern about the composition of the court, which led to several suspensions of the hearing. They pointed out an irregularity referring to Article 254 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, which states that a criminal court must consist of 5 members, a president, and 4 assessors. However, the current court is made up of only a president and 2 assessors. Christopher Atichu has the update in this report.
Mr. Pokam Kunde, representing the defense, insisted on the need to respect the legal provision before any continuation of the debate. He asked the court to rectify its composition to guarantee the legitimacy of the trial. The court suspended the hearing at 10:13 a.m. to deliberate on the exception raised by the defense. 15 minutes later, it decided to join the exception to the merits, thus allowing the debates to continue despite the objections of the lawyers. At 10:30, A new suspension was requested by the defense between the lawyers and the members of the court. When the hearing resumed at 11:02, Mr. Ayodele Ahono took to the floor to express his disappointment at the court's decision to continue the proceedings with a composition that he considered illegal. In an unexpected move, he announced that he was withdrawing from the defense of businessman Olivier Boko. Following this, the other defense lawyers also decided to withdraw, leaving the defendant without legal defense for the remainder of the trial. This twist creates major uncertainty about the continuation of the trial. The disestablishment of the defense raises questions about the continuation of the debate, the possibility of a postponement, or even a procedural defect.
Christopher Aticho reporting there. In more judicial matters, in Guinea, another trial involving former Prime Minister Ibrahim Kassore Fofana continued before the court for the repression of economic and financial offences. The prosecutor is requesting 5 years in prison against the former Prime Minister during Alpha Conde's regime and a fine of 5 billion Guinean francs. However, Kassore's lawyers denounced procedural defects and refused to plead in court. His fate will be decided on February 13, 2025. Imo Edit has the details in this report.
The prosecutor supported the appeal, requesting a 5-year prison sentence and a fine of 5 billion Guinean francs against Ibrahima Kassore Fofana. Prosecutor Ali Toure justified this request.
We believe that this is just the minimum for an individual who is prosecuted for the effect of misappropriation of public friendship. If you allow the accumulation of offences in our country, the sentence would be up to 50 years. This is why we took 5 years that we believe are totally commensurate with the facts that were pursued by our prosecution. We have not invented anything.
On the other hand, the defense lawyers, led by Councillor Sidiki Berete, refused to make their case, deeming the prosecution's request unacceptable.
This is serious for the people of Guinea. No one is safe now. This is injustice. There has been preventive detention for 3 years for a founder that he did not even manage. And we are asking Kassore, who served this country for 40 years, to justify his poor house in Lambagna. It is inhumane, especially since he is sick. This is why we refuse to participate in a simple parody of justice to satisfy the coup leaders, after which they will grease us in order to have us politically disqualified.
Meanwhile, the judges put the case under advisement and will make a decision on February 13, 2025.
That was Channel Alpha Ibrahim Mbadet's report from Conakry, voiced by Imo Edit.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Reporters Without Borders has welcomed the release of journalist Senin Amadou and the lifting of the suspension on the private media outlet Canal 3 in Niger. The press organization, however, frowns at the clampdown on media institutions in the Sahel. The editor-in-chief of Canal 3 was released on Monday after spending 3 days in police custody. He was placed in custody after Canal 3 broadcast a performance ranking of government ministers, which were met with backlash from the Minister of Communication, Sidi Mohamed Ralou. Abdullahi Hassan has the details in this report, filed by our Niamey correspondent, Mutala Zuberu.
Senin Amadou, editor-in-chief of Canal 3 Niger, regains his freedom after 72 hours in police custody in the premises of the Niamey Judicial Police. The sanctions taken against him and his media outlet were lifted by the Nigerian Minister of Communication. This decision has been welcomed by Modu Musa, coordinator of the Action Framework for Media Professionals.
What must be welcomed is the wisdom of the authorities, particularly the Minister of Communication, who was willing to hear our call by suspending these measures that we considered to be totally illegal because they are not based on any regulatory provision, particularly in this period of rebuilding the country. And this fight that we are waging is a fight of the Nigerian people, and we will always and in all circumstances be ready to fight it.
The Despite this positive development, Reporters Without Borders (RSF) expresses concern about the state of press freedom in the Central Sahel region, describing it as a black hole for information. Sadibu Marong is the director of RSF West and Central Africa.
The major fear we had when we launched our Save Journalism in the Sahel campaign was practically to ensure that this area, at least the Central Sahel, would not be the biggest black hole for information in Africa. We have to pedal, we have to mobilize, we have to pool our efforts to avoid that. But gradually, with the emergence of the military authorities, we had the impression that we were getting there at a given moment in a context where all the international colleges had left.
The suspension of the Canal 3 television channel followed the broadcast of a report entitled Barometer of the Members of the Government, an item that aimed to rate the ministers of the military regime according to their performance. Sain Amadou, editor-in-chief of the television, was arrested following the broadcast of the material. His professional card was then suspended for 3 months.
Abdullahi Hassan with the details of Mutala Soberu's report from Niamey. In Burkina Faso, the National Council for Emergency Relief and Rehabilitation held an ordinary session on the reintegration of more than 1 million displaced people who have returned thanks to the action of Burkinabe fighters. The 17th ordinary session was chaired by the new Minister of Humanitarian Action and National Solidarity, Commander Pasowendi Pelagi Kabri. On the occasion, she praised the bravery of the fighters who enabled more than 1 million people displaced by terrorism to return to their places of origin. Minister Kabri said that as of December 31, 2024, the return of 1.1 million people from 165,375 households in 397 localities of origin have been recorded. Elsewhere, Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has appointed African Union Chairperson's Special Representative in charge of counter-terrorism cooperation, Larry Belulati, as the Special Envoy to the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. His appointment to the office of the presidency is aimed at strengthening governance, enhancing operational efficiency, and deepening ties between Ghana and the newly formed AES member countries. The appointment of Larry Belulati comes at the time the AES member countries have vowed to exit the regional bloc by 29th January 2025. A security analyst and international affairs analyst with Dan Rakia Institute, Al Hassan Suleiman Bello, has been analyzing the establishment of this new envoy and impossible impact on regional peace and stability.
Look at the invitation extended by the new president during his inauguration. Aside Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, aside Doumbouya, Ngoita, and what do you call this guy? And he extended an invitation to even the Gabonese military junta leader. And from that instance, I felt it was an opportunity to create a room for dialogue. And that also gives Ghana enormous regional clout. Stemming from the fact that due to the forceful rhetoric of Nigeria and its failure to match words with action when it threatened to invade its neighbor Niger, Tinubu has actually lost favor in the eyes of these coup plotters. And so that position put Ghana in a poor position to take the lead. But my worry is that, is it coordinated effort with ECOWAS, or it's just unilateral decision, minding the fact that Juma Ifai of Senegal is official ECOWAS envoy to those AES countries, and he has been trying to negotiate with them to see so that the rift between these countries and ECOWAS can be resolved. But if restoration of democracy is the condition on the table, then I don't foresee these countries coming back to ECOWAS fold. But if some other areas of mutual interest and mutual concern are first of all addressed in terms of cross-border crimes, in terms of Islamist insurgency, mind you, there was a recent attack on Benin Republic. I think one of the worst attacks that killed about 40 soldiers. It tells you the transnational nature of terrorism and the need to address it regionally.
Does it mean that the attempt or the creation of the special envoy to the Alliance of the Sahelian States truly means that Ghana fully recognizes the confederation of the AES?
Sending an envoy does not really signify a recognition. What might signify recognition was the invitation of those junta leaders to the president's inauguration. But that itself is an admission of the fact on the ground. And let's take a look at these protests in their individual capacity, okay? Doumbouya overthrew an unpopular leader who was abusing the constitution against the silence of ECOWAS. The ECOWAS protocol, 6 months prior to election or electoral related, laws and activity, and regulations and institutions are not supposed to be tampered with.
Al-Hassan Suleiman Bilo is a security analyst and international affairs analyst. Just before recap, Ghana's Minister of Roads and Highways designate of Ghana, Kwame Governs Agboja, has announced that road tolls in the country that were cancelled in November 2023 will return. He explained that the circumstances that led to the cancellation were illegal and did not follow legal procedures.
Honorable Haruna and myself met Honorable Amwakwata and gave our commitment that don't cancel it. Indeed, we were surprised on the day the road toll, they claimed they zeroed it. For me, it was an act of illegality. Yes, they said they just zeroed it. But it was, a road fund has got an act. It's a law. So you couldn't unilaterally do that. As a result, I believe there was a level of negligence in the way it was done. Can you imagine how many roadside weed clearers will be paid with 80 million? So they cancelled it. And our side consistently stood on principle and said, bring the road toll back. Yes, the road toll is coming back, but not in the form of building obstructions on the road for drivers to stop and somebody taking money from them. It will be coming back based on a technological platform that make it fair and that make it easy to collect, easy to account for, and for the public to know what the money is actually being used for.
He's Ghana's Minister of Roads and Highways designate, Kwame Governs Agboja. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of the top stories. Magistrates across Liberia protest against their exclusion from retroactive benefits. Reporters Without Borders react to the release of Nigerian journalist Senyi. Reaction trails President Mahaman's appointment of Special Envoy to the AES. Lawyers of former Guinean Prime Minister Kasori denounced procedural defects and refused to plead in court. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for sticking with us. As a reminder, we are streaming live on YouTube at WADR News and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Victims Center of the Gambia, comprising victims of former President Yahya Jammeh's regime, has lamented challenges they are faced with. And this comes after the Select Committee on Human and Constitutional Rights visited the center with a view to fostering better working relations with the two institutions. The victims also applaud the members of parliament for implementing the reparations bill, which seeks to provide reparations for the victims. Now, elsewhere, global reactions have continued to trail the inaugural speech of U.S. President Donald Trump, with many, especially African leaders, unsettling about the future of the continent's relationship with the United States. While others have lauded President Trump's speech for thinking America first, others, like international relations expert and Nigeria's former External Affairs Minister, Professor Akinwande Bolaji Akinyemi, however, says the speech was empty with no intention specifically for Africa.
This was not an inaugural address. This was more like a rabble-rousing address to a mob in the United States. There was nothing there for the rest of the world. It was more an address threatening different parts of the world rather than an address calling upon the world to be a partner to the United States. I have never in my life heard of an inaugural address that strips naked all the achievements of his successor and his predecessors. while they are sitting, it was such a crude address. I know you want me to focus on Africa or what Nigeria should look forward to. You are giving me a task I cannot do because I'm not really sure that if you ask Trump to spell Africa or to spell Nigeria or to locate where we are on the globe, he will be able to do so. We are out of his focus.
He is Nigeria's former External Affairs Minister, Professor Akinwendi Bolaji Akinyemi. Meanwhile, for his part, Ghanaian-based international relations expert Michael Nkisia says it's time for African leaders to sit up as President Trump will be pulling off some finding blocks.
Yesterday, he talked so much about his administration not taxing Americans to enrich the rest of the world. Rather, he's going to tax the rest of the world to enrich Americans. That should tell us that African countries, African leaders should expect a lot of budgetary support. They shouldn't expect a lot of budgetary support from the American government under the administration of Donald Trump. There's going to be budgetary cuts in support of U.S. aid and development assistance to the rest of the world. There's going to be a lot of budget cuts. So if you are an African government whose budget relies solely or is hugely dependent on foreign aid to foreign donor support on development assistance from America, you should be worried.
Ghanaian-based international relations expert Michael Nkisia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our focus in this segment of Newslink is the global reaction the speech made by U.S. President Donald Trump is receiving, especially from African leaders, experts of all kinds. Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States on Monday. These statements, however, has caused some uncertainty among African leaders, with experts already predicting a slowdown in funding. Our guest is international relations expert Michael Nkisia.
Donald Trump himself has been an unconventional politician, and with regards to international relations and global diplomacy, he has demonstrated over the years that he doesn't toe the line of normal international diplomacy and statesmen. If you look at some of the words, the nature of words, the kind of words and alleged descriptions he gave to some countries, referring to people from Mexico and the Caribbean and Latin America who come to the country as criminals, as murderers, as rapists. These are very highly undiplomatic languages to be used by perhaps the most powerful man on earth. So it is not surprising that even in his second term, despite all the experiences he garnered in his first term, he still continues to use this kind of pedestrian approach in his speech delivery, using some words which may not qualify or may not be accepted in the natural political landscape. But that is Donald Trump for you. That makes him different from other political actors in the international arena. And that makes him different from other political actors. He told the same rhetoric, arguments, and line that Trump has been known for since he emerged in 2015 to contest for the U.S. presidency.
Mr. Mike,
and it is not surprising.
Yeah, let me quickly take you up on the African-U.S. relationship. Already we have seen Donald Trump pulling off the plug from the support of the WHO. This has also shaken African leaders as to what is Trump bringing on board, for the Africa-U.S. relationship. What do you think may likely happen?
Yesterday, he talked so much about his administration not taxing Americans to enrich the rest of the world. Rather, he's going to tax the rest of the world to enrich Americans. That should tell us that African countries, African leaders should expect a lot of budgetary support. They shouldn't expect a lot of budgetary support from the American government under the administration of Donald Trump. There's going to be budgetary cuts in support of U.S. aid and development assistance to the rest of the world. There's going to be a lot of budget cuts. So if you are an African government whose budget relies solely or is hugely dependent on foreign aid to foreign donor support, on development assistance from America, you should be worried. Also, we know that during his first administration, he cut American funding to the United Nations Climate Convention.
Yes.
He withdrew even America's signatory to the Paris Climate Agreement and Accord, and all these affected the billions of dollars that were pledged in Paris for climate interventions, either climate adaptation or meditation on the African continent. And he's hell-bound to continue all those anti-green initiatives, cut funding for foreign donor assistance, and also cut funding for climate and other green interventions and initiatives.
Okay.
And all these will come at a cost to African countries, especially when we remain the most vulnerable to climate risk and disasters, and when we need so much money for various forms of climate adaptation and mitigation interventions on the continent.
Michael Nketsia is an international relations expert. Next is Sankule Janko with sports.
Hello out there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Let's begin with cricket today. The junior female Yellow Greens of Nigeria's under-19 women's cricket team stunned the cricket world with a thrilling 2-run victory over test-playing nation New Zealand in their opening match of the 2025 ICCU under-19 Women's T20 World Cup on Monday, according to Brila Sport. The historic win took place at the Moreno Cricket Ground in Sarawak, Malaysia, as Nigeria showcased resilience and determination to pull off one of the tournament's biggest upsets. With this monumental win, Nigeria sits second in Group C with 3 points, thrilling leader South Africa, who defeated Samoa by 10 wickets. Both Nigeria and South Africa are strong contenders to advance to the Super 6 stage of the tournament. This victory not only marks Nigeria's first ever win in a Cricket World Cup, writing their name in the books of record, but also underscores the rapid growth of women's cricket in the country, Brila reports. And in football, the eagerly anticipated final draw of the CAF Africa Cup of Nations AFCON Morocco 2025 will be held in Rabat on 27 January 2025, where the 24 competing teams will learn their opponents. According to CAF official website, the draw to be attended by the 24 nations that have qualified for the AFCON 2025. The draw provides the national teams with the opportunity to assess excellent match venues, training facilities and hotel infrastructure in Morocco. Morocco will be hosting the finals for the first time since 1988 as we enter an exciting time for the North African nation, who are also co-hosts of the 2030 FIFA World Cup alongside Spain and Portugal. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa, the Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maudo Juf and Umun Danyogo for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Cully. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM.